My parents told me my college fund was gone. "We lost everything, honey," they said. But later, I overheard them bragging to my brother about using my tuition money to fund his startup. What they didn't know was, I'd already moved all my assets, and this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about the gut-wrenching moment my own parents stole my future right out from under me, and how that shattering injustice became the very fuel I needed to build something far greater than they could ever imagine. It was a betrayal so profound it forced me to ask, when the people who should lift you up try to tear you down, what do you do? I'm Mackenzie, and for as long as I can remember, my entire life was a carefully plotted course toward one goal: getting into Yale. My parents, Robert and Diana, had fueled this dream since I was 7, showing me a special folder with college fund statements promising, "By the time you're ready, you'll be able to go anywhere you want. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, the sky's the limit." That promise wasn't just words. It was the foundation of my childhood. While other kids were messing around, I was building my resume. Debate captain, science fair winner, a perfect 4.0 GPA. That college fund wasn't just money. It was proof that they believed in me, that all my relentless hard work would pay off. Then there was Nathan, my brother, 3 years younger and my polar opposite. Where I was disciplined, he was spontaneous. Where I was cautious, he was reckless. And my parents, they absolutely adored him for it. "Nathan's just so full of life," Mom would gush, even after he'd bring home a mediocre report card. "Not everyone is built for academics. He's a people person. He's going to make connections and go places." I didn't resent him for being different, but I couldn't ignore the pattern. My parents bailing him out of every sticky situation, while expecting me to handle everything perfectly on my own. Nathan totaled his car. He got a newer, better one a week later. I saved 3 years for my beat-up Honda Civic. Nathan nearly failed English. Mom spent 2 weeks negotiating with his teachers. I got a D in AP chemistry. Did you not study enough, Mackenzie? Still, through all this, I never doubted their love. I just figured they had different expectations for us. And they kept contributing to that college fund, that shining beacon of my future. By my senior year, Yale was my obsession. Their biochemistry program was calling my name. I applied, early decision, poured my soul into those essays, and when that acceptance letter arrived, I screamed so loud our neighbors thought something terrible had happened. My parents took me to the fanciest restaurant in town. Mom, teary-eyed, toasted, "Yale won't know what hit them." That night, Dad, Robert, told me the fund was just over $150,000. Enough to make Yale feasible with scholarships and a part-time job. "We always knew you'd aim high," he said, patting my shoulder. The next few months were a blur of pure euphoria. I joined Yale groups, corresponded with my roommate, planned out my courses. Even Nathan seemed happy for me, though he'd decided to take a gap year to find himself. Looking back, I should have seen the subtle cracks in their behavior. Mom changing the subject when I brought up classes, hushed conversations that abruptly stopped when I entered a room, Dad and Nathan's frequent business discussions behind closed doors. But I was too wrapped up in my dreams, too trusting, too naive to imagine that the people who had encouraged my ambitions for so long could be plotting to undermine them just as they were about to become reality. Then, 2 weeks before move-in day, my world imploded. "Family meeting," Dad's grave voice echoed up the stairs. I came down, textbooks in hand, ready for logistical talk. Mom sat stiffly, hands clasped. Dad stood by the fireplace, arms crossed. Nathan, true to form, slouched in an armchair, scrolling his phone. "Put the phone down, Nathan. This is serious," Dad snapped. My anxiety fluttered. "What's going on? Is everyone okay?" Mom and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't decipher. Dad cleared his throat. "Mackenzie, honey, there's no easy way to say this. There's been a situation with your college fund." The room tilted. "What kind of situation?" "We lost it," Mom blurted, her voice cracking. "We lost everything, honey." My mind went blank. Lost. Like the bank made an error. Dad shook his head slowly. "No, it wasn't an error. About 8 months ago, I was approached about an investment opportunity. A sure thing, or so I thought. A chance to significantly increase your college fund. Mom interjected. I told him it was risky. Dad continued. A commercial property downtown. Double-digit returns within months. The developer had a track record. My brain was struggling to keep up. So what happened? The developer took the money and disappeared, Dad said, spreading his hands helplessly. Your college fund, Mackenzie, it's empty. I felt a physical punch to the stomach. All of it. The entire $150,000. Mom nodded, dabbing at her eyes. We're so sorry, sweetie. We were just trying to make things better for you. I looked at Nathan, who was suddenly fascinated by his fingernails. His lack of surprise was my first red flag. If this was news, why wasn't he reacting? When did you find out it was gone? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. About 3 weeks ago, Dad said. 3 weeks. I repeated, my voice rising. And you're just telling me now? 2 weeks before I'm supposed to move to New Haven. Mom mumbled about hoping for a miracle. My mind, despite the shock, immediately switched to problem solving. Okay, so we'll need to look at additional loans. I can increase my work study, maybe an off-campus job. Mackenzie, Dad interrupted, his voice firm. Yale isn't going to happen. Not now. Disbelief hit me like a tidal wave. What are you talking about? Of course it's going to happen. I'll figure it out. Mom tried to be gentle. Honey, the cost is prohibitive. Nearly $80,000 a year. I have scholarships, I argued. I can apply for more. There are private loans, which would leave you hundreds of thousands in debt, Dad cut in. Be reasonable, Mackenzie. There are other options. Massachusetts State has a good science program, or 2 years at community college, live at home. I couldn't breathe. After all those years, all that work, they were telling me to give up my dream, 2 weeks before it started. This can't be happening, I whispered. Nathan, finally looking up from his nails, piped in. It's just a school, Mac, not the end of the world. I shot him a look that could have frozen fire. Easy for you to say. You don't even want to go to college. That's not fair, Mom said. Your brother has different aspirations. Apparently. His aspirations get funded no matter what. I snapped, noticing the brand new gaming setup in the corner of the room that definitely hadn't been there last week. Dad's expression hardened. That's enough, Mackenzie. We're all upset, but there's no need for that tone. We're trying to be practical here. I took a deep, shaky breath. Arguing wouldn't help. I needed to think. I need some time, I finally said. I need to figure this out. Mom nodded, relieved. Of course, honey. Just be realistic, okay? That night I didn't sleep a wink. I researched every financial option, emailed Yale's financial aid, applied for every last-minute scholarship. By morning I had a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I would go to Yale, but it would mean 4 years of extreme frugality. Maximum loans, maximum work study, a weekend job, no spring breaks, no eating out, no new clothes. Yale's financial aid office was sympathetic but limited. They bumped my scholarship slightly, but it was nowhere near enough. My parents' reaction to my determination was strange, almost annoyed. They weren't proud of my resourcefulness. They were disappointed I hadn't just accepted their suggestion to abandon my dream. You're being stubborn, Dad said when I showed him my plan. This is exactly the kind of impulsive decision that leads young people into crippling debt. Coming from the man who had supposedly lost my entire college fund in an impulsive investment, the irony was so thick I could choke on it. 2 weeks later, Mom and Dad drove me to Yale with significantly less enthusiasm than I'd anticipated. My dorm room, which I'd envisioned decorating with their proud smiles, was set up in tense silence. They left early, citing the long drive back, leaving me alone with my second-hand textbooks and the cheapest meal plan. That first semester was grueling. While classmates joined clubs and partied, I was working in the dining hall, the library, tutoring just to make ends meet. I skipped meals, walked everywhere. My roommate, Sophie, daughter of a hedge fund manager, watched my frugal existence with a mixture of curiosity and pity. "You know," she said one night as I calculated laundry costs, "my dad always says, you can't earn your way out of a financial hole with minimum wage jobs. You need to think bigger." I was too exhausted to appreciate it then, but her words would echo later. Despite the crushing financial stress, I excelled. My professors, especially Professor Wilson in biochemistry, saw my work ethic. "You have a unique mind, Mackenzie," she told me. "You don't just memorize. You engage with it, question it, improve upon it." Her words were a balm to my battered self-esteem. At least here, in this academic sanctuary, my value was recognized. If only my family could see me the same way. As Christmas break approached, I dreaded it. I'd been too busy to fully process the betrayal, but now, 3 weeks at home, I'd have to face them. Little did I know, the worst betrayal was yet to be revealed. When Dad picked me up from the train station, the first thing I noticed was his new watch. A definite upgrade from his decade-old Timex. The second, the brand new SUV I was sitting in. "Nice car," I commented, feigning nonchalance. "When did you get this?" "Oh, about a month ago," he replied casually. "The old one was giving me trouble. Sometimes you have to invest in reliability." Invest. An interesting choice of words from someone who supposedly lost every penny of my college fund in a bad investment. At home, evidence of hardship was conspicuously absent. New furniture, a bigger TV, Mom's new haircut and highlights. Small changes, individually meaningless, but collectively painting a picture of a family far from struggling. Then there was Nathan's room. It wasn't just a basic desk and laptop anymore. It was a complete home office setup. Dual monitors, ergonomic chair, the latest MacBook Pro, a whiteboard covered in business plans. "Nathan's really gotten serious about his future," Mom explained, catching me staring. "He's developing a tech startup. Very promising." "Really?" I replied. "That's a lot of equipment for someone who was finding himself a few months ago." She laughed nervously. "Well, you know your brother. When he gets passionate, he goes all in." "All in with what money?" I wondered. But I didn't ask. Not yet. I needed more. That night, I lay awake, listening to muffled conversations from downstairs. Around midnight, when I was sure everyone thought I was asleep, I crept to the top of the stairs. "She seems to be doing fine," I heard Dad sing. "A little thinner maybe, but that's probably the dining hall food." "Do you think she suspects anything?" Mom's voice was tense. "Why would she? As far as she knows, we're victims too. Besides, she's too busy with her precious Yale to pay attention to what's happening here." The sound of ice clinking. Then Nathan's voice. "When are we going to tell her about Digital Apex?" "She's going to find out eventually." Digital Apex. I'd never heard that name. "We'll tell her when there's something to tell," Dad replied. "Once you're profitable, she'll understand why we made the decision we did. She's smart enough to recognize a good investment when she sees one." Mom made a sound of agreement. "Exactly. What good is an Ivy League education in today's economy anyway? Nathan's building something real, something tangible. In 5 years, he could be the next Mark Zuckerberg, and then we can pay for Mackenzie's student loans 10 times over." Nathan added, sounding pleased. "She'll thank us then." I gripped the banister so hard my knuckles turned white. They hadn't lost my college fund. They had deliberately taken it to fund Nathan's startup. They had lied to my face, watched me scramble for loans, sent me off to a life of financial stress, all while secretly believing they'd made the right choice to prioritize Nathan's business idea over my education. "I still think we should have told her the truth," Nathan said, surprising me. "She's going to be really angry." "What's she going to do?" Dad scoffed. "Sue us. The money was in our names legally. Besides, she's always been the sensible one. Once Digital Apex takes off, she'll see this was the smart play. Education is overrated in the digital age. Look at all the college dropouts who've become billionaires." "Robert's right," Mom chimed in. "Nathan, you have a real gift for business. Mackenzie has book smarts. different kinds of intelligence. We're just investing where we'll see the biggest return. I'd heard enough. I crept back to my room, heart pounding with a cold, righteous fury. The pieces clicked into place. The new possessions, their lack of guilt, the dismissal of my achievements as mere book smarts. In that moment I made a decision. I wouldn't confront them. Not yet. Knowledge was power and I needed more of both. The next morning I casually asked Nathan about his new equipment. Looks like you've got quite the setup there. What are you working on? He hesitated, glancing at the kitchen. Just some app development stuff. Nothing solid yet. That's cool. I feigned genuine interest. What kind of app? Like most people with an idea they think is brilliant. He couldn't resist. It's called Digital Apex. A revolutionary social media platform for entrepreneurs and investors to connect. Like LinkedIn meets Shark Tank. Users can pitch ideas, investors browse. Sounds interesting, I nodded. How far along are you? We've got the basic platform architecture mapped out. I'm working with a developer in India to build the MVP. Should be ready for beta testing in a few months. Me and this guy I met during my gap year. He's the tech guy. I'm the vision guy. Nathan puffed up. We're going to revolutionize how startups get funded. Over the next few days, my stealth investigation continued. When no one was home, I found a folder in Dad's office labeled DA Investment, containing bank statements showing multiple transfers from my college fund account to a new business account, Digital Apex LLC. I photographed everything. I recorded a subsequent conversation where my parents and Nathan discussed the business. I saved emails where Dad explicitly referred to using Mackenzie's college money because she can take out loans like everyone else. I compiled all this evidence meticulously, not sure how I'd use it but certain I'd need it someday. I also reached out to Yale's legal aid, but the news wasn't good. Since the account was in my parents' names, my legal recourse was limited unless I could prove explicit designation. By the time I returned to Yale for the spring semester, I had a comprehensive understanding of their betrayal and a simmering determination to somehow make things right. What I didn't have was a plan. That would come later, courtesy of an unexpected mentor and an opportunity that would change everything. Back at Yale, I threw myself into my studies with even more intensity. If I couldn't control my financial situation, I could at least excel academically. I signed up for the most challenging courses, volunteered for extra lab hours, and rarely slept more than 5 hours a night. It wasn't healthy, but it kept my mind off the betrayal. Professor Sarah Wilson, my advanced biochemistry professor, noticed my dedication and my exhaustion. "Mackenzie, could you stay after class?" she asked one day. I braced myself for a lecture about overdoing it. Instead, she offered me an opportunity. "I've been watching your work this semester. You have an exceptional mind, particularly for seeing connections others miss. I'm leading a research project on enzyme catalysis for targeted drug delivery, and I think you'd be a valuable addition to the team. It comes with a stipend." The stipend was small, but it was more than the dining hall with better hours. More importantly, it was a chance to do meaningful work in my field. "I'd be honored," I told her. "Thank you for considering me." "Don't thank me," she replied with a small smile. "This isn't charity. I need bright minds on this project." Working in Professor Wilson's lab changed everything. For the first time since discovering my parents' betrayal, I felt valued for my intelligence and work ethic. The grad students treated me as an equal. Professor Wilson trusted me with increasingly complex tasks and always listened carefully to my ideas. One evening, as we analyzed some particularly promising data, I found myself sharing my story with her. I hadn't planned to. It just poured out after she asked why someone as talented as me was working 3 jobs. To my surprise, she didn't offer pity. Instead, she offered perspective. "That's a terrible betrayal," she acknowledged. "But I have to ask, what are you going to do with it? Let it destroy you or use it as fuel?" "What do you mean?" "Yes." She gestured around the lab. "Science is full of stories like yours. Marie Curie worked as a governess to fund her sister's medical education before she could pursue her own studies. Countless brilliant minds have overcome financial obstacles and family disapproval. The question is, what will your story be? Her words struck a chord. Until then, I'd been reacting to my parents' betrayal, to my financial constraints, to the unfairness of it all. I hadn't been proactive in shaping my own future beyond trying to stay afloat. You're too focused on what was taken from you, Professor Wilson continued. Start thinking about what you can create instead. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with a new perspective. Nathan's startup was likely to fail. I'd done enough research to know his idea wasn't unique and his technical knowledge was limited. But what if I could create something successful? Something that would not only secure my financial future but prove to my parents that they had bet on the wrong child. The next day, I approached Professor Wilson. The enzyme modification technique we've been developing, does it have commercial applications beyond the current research? She looked intrigued. Potentially, yes. Why do you ask? I've been thinking about the precision targeting system. If we could adapt it for cosmetic formulations, couldn't it revolutionize how active ingredients are delivered to specific layers of skin? Professor Wilson considered this. That's actually quite innovative. The beauty industry is always looking for the next breakthrough in delivery systems. Over the next few weeks, we explored this idea. The technique for medical applications could, with modifications, be applied to skincare products to ensure active ingredients reached precisely the right depth of skin tissue for maximum effectiveness without degradation. Current products on the market had significant waste. You should consider patenting this application, Professor Wilson suggested. Yale has an Office of Cooperative Research that helps students and faculty commercialize innovations. I made an appointment the next day. The patent attorney was cautiously optimistic. This is a novel application with significant market potential, he said. The university would retain partial ownership, but as the innovator, you'd receive the majority of any licensing revenue. For the first time, I began to see a path forward that didn't involve crushing debt or years of financial struggle. But I needed more than a patent. I needed business knowledge, connections, and resources. Yale, it turned out, had those too. The university's entrepreneurship center offered workshops, mentorship, even seed funding. I signed up for everything, absorbing knowledge about business models, market analysis, fundraising. I met Jordan Chen, an MBA student, who was impressed by my technical innovation and offered to help develop a business plan. We were joined by Liam Rodriguez, a chemistry grad student from Professor Wilson's lab, who believed in the commercial potential of our modified enzyme delivery system. Together, we formed Precision Dermal Science, a startup focused on revolutionizing active ingredient delivery in skincare products. Our first product would be a serum utilizing our proprietary enzyme technology to deliver anti-aging compounds to the precise skin layer where they would be most effective. Professor Wilson introduced us to Dr. Elizabeth Barnes, a dermatologist on Yale's medical faculty, who became our scientific advisor. Dr. Barnes was enthusiastic. The biggest challenge in dermatological products is getting the active ingredients where they need to go. If your system works as you've described, it could be game-changing. With Dr. Barnes' guidance, we refined our formulation and conducted small-scale laboratory tests. The results exceeded even our optimistic projections. Our delivery system was getting nearly 5 times more active ingredient to the target skin layer than leading commercial products. Meanwhile, I continued gathering evidence about my parents' misappropriation of my college fund. I learned that Nathan's digital Apex had burned through nearly $50,000 in 6 months with nothing to show for it, but an incomplete website and some generic logo designs. My father had transferred another $30,000 to the business account in March. At this rate, my entire college fund would be gone before I finished sophomore year. I could have confronted them then, but something held me back. Maybe it was Professor Wilson's advice about focusing on creation rather than loss. Maybe it was the growing excitement I felt about precision dermal science. Or maybe I just wanted to wait until I had something concrete to show them. Proof that they had made the wrong bet. In April, Yale's Entrepreneurship Center hosted its annual innovation competition. Jordan, Liam, and I entered Precision Dermal Science, competing against 30 other student ventures for a $25,000 prize and mentorship. We worked tirelessly on our pitch, refining our presentation, preparing for every possible question. I channeled all my anger, determination, and desperate need to prove myself into that presentation. This wasn't just about winning a competition. It was about validating my worth. The day of the competition, I stood before the judges, a panel of venture capitalists and successful entrepreneurs, and delivered the most important presentation of my life. I explained the science in accessible terms, demonstrated the market opportunity with compelling data, and outlined our roadmap to commercialization with confidence and clarity. When they announced Precision Dermal Science as the winner, I almost couldn't believe it. The judges cited the combination of genuine scientific innovation, clear market need, and our team's passionate expertise as the deciding factors. That night, as Jordan, Liam, and I celebrated, my phone lit up with a text from Nathan. "Congrats on your science fair win." Meanwhile, Dad just invested another $20K in digital Apex. "We're meeting with real investors next month." I smiled to myself. If only he knew that one of the science fair judges had already connected us with her venture capital firm for a potential seed investment discussion. If only he knew that Dr. Barnes had introduced us to 3 cosmetic companies interested in our technology. If only my parents knew that the child they had dismissed and defrauded was building something with far more potential than they could imagine. But they would know soon enough. I was no longer in a rush to confront them. Now, I wanted to wait until I had something truly impressive to show for my efforts. Something that would make their betrayal all the more foolish in retrospect. As Professor Wilson had suggested, I was using their betrayal as fuel. And that fuel was powering something extraordinary. Summer arrived, and with it a pivotal decision. I had been offered a prestigious internship at a pharmaceutical company in San Francisco. The kind of opportunity most biochemistry students would kill for. But I also had Precision Dermal Science, which needed my full attention if it was going to succeed. "Take the risk," Professor Wilson advised. "Internships come and go. But how often do you get a chance to build something that's truly yours?" I turned down the internship and instead applied for summer housing at Yale, using part of our competition winnings to cover the cost. Jordan, Liam, and I converted a small rented space near campus into our makeshift headquarters, complete with a basic laboratory setup. The venture capital firm that had expressed interest after the competition came through with $150,000 in seed funding in exchange for a 10% equity stake. It was a fair deal that allowed us to maintain control while giving us the resources to accelerate our progress. We used the money strategically, filing our patent application, upgrading our lab equipment, commissioning formal clinical testing of our prototype, and hiring a part-time marketing consultant. I avoided going home that summer, telling my parents I had research opportunities that required me to stay at Yale. It wasn't exactly a lie. What I didn't tell them was that the research was for my own company, or that I was now living in an apartment with running water but no air conditioning, because we were putting every available dollar into the business. Nathan came to visit me once, ostensibly to see the campus, but really to boast about Digital Apex's progress. "We're this close to launching the beta version," he told me over coffee. "Dad's connections have been incredible." He introduced us to some serious players in the Boston tech scene. "That's great," I said, genuinely curious how far they'd gotten. "How many users do you have signed up for the beta?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Well, we're still building the pre-launch list, but we've got a killer social media strategy ready to go. 0 users, no functional product, just lots of expensive plans and dwindling capital." I felt a twinge of sadness beneath my resentment. Nathan wasn't a bad person, just entitled and overconfident. And my parents had fed that entitlement at my expense. "What about you?" he asked, clearly ready to change the subject. "Still working in labs for extra credit?" Smiled. "Something like that." I didn't tell him about Precision Dermal Science. I didn't mention the venture capital funding or the promising early clinical results or the 3 cosmetic companies that were now actively courting us for potential licensing deals. Let him, and through him my parents, continue to underestimate me. The revelation would be all the sweeter. By August, we had reached a critical milestone. Our clinical testing showed that our delivery system outperformed all existing market solutions by a significant margin. We had scientific proof that our technology worked. Jordan leveraged this data to secure meetings with executives from leading skincare companies. In one particularly promising meeting, the R&D director of a major cosmetics conglomerate leaned forward after our presentation and said, "This is exactly what we've been looking for. How soon can we discuss licensing terms?" We were suddenly facing a pivotal decision: license our technology to established brands, or develop and market our own product line. Each path had its advantages and risks. Licensing means immediate revenue with minimal additional investment, Jordan argued. We could be profitable within months. But developing our own brand means controlling how the technology is used and marketed, Liam countered. And potentially much higher returns long-term. I listened, weighing them carefully. Then I thought about what had driven me to this point. Not just the desire for financial success, but the need to create something meaningful that validated my worth. What if we do both? I suggested. License the technology for specific applications to generate immediate revenue, but reserve the rights to develop our own signature product line. It was an ambitious strategy, but Jordan's business acumen and our growing network of advisors made it feasible. By September, when I returned from my sophomore year, Precision Dermal Science had secured its first licensing agreement with a premium skincare brand, providing us with a 6-figure upfront payment plus royalties on future sales. We were also in advanced discussions with 2 other companies. The financial strain that had defined my freshman year was suddenly absent. I could afford to reduce my work hours and focus more on academics and the business. I moved to a better off-campus apartment, one with actual air conditioning and enough space for a small home office. Meanwhile, I continued monitoring the digital apex situation. Through casual conversations with Nathan and strategic questions to my parents, I learned that the beta launch had been delayed multiple times due to technical issues. The developer in India had delivered subpar code. The serious players from the Boston tech scene had declined to invest, and my parents had now funneled nearly $120,000, 4/5 of my college fund, into the failing venture. "It's just taking longer than expected," Mom insisted during one of our phone calls. "All startups face hurdles, but your father and I still believe in Nathan's vision." I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to point out that they had never shown such patient faith in my academic hurdles. As fall turned to winter, Precision Dermal Science continued its upward trajectory. Our patent application was proceeding smoothly. Our licensing revenues were exceeding projections, and we had begun development on our signature product, a revolutionary anti-aging serum. Professor Wilson remarked on the change she observed. "You're different this year," she said after lab one evening. "More confident, more focused." "I feel different," I admitted. "Like I'm finally building something that can't be taken away from me." She nodded understandingly. "Success is the best revenge, they say. But I hope you find it's also its own reward, independent of whatever score you're settling with your family." Her words gave me pause. Was I building Precision Dermal Science for the right reasons? Was my motivation still primarily to prove my parents wrong? I reflected on this question. The truth was more complex than simple revenge. Yes, I wanted to show my parents the magnitude of their mistake. But I had also discovered a genuine passion for entrepreneurship, for seeing an idea transform into reality, for solving problems in innovative ways, for creating value where none existed before. Perhaps the greatest gift of my parents' betrayal was that it had pushed me to discover this part of myself sooner than I might have otherwise. By December, as I prepared to return home for Christmas break, Precision Dermal Science had achieved another milestone. Our first official product sample, packaged in elegant glass bottles with our logo embossed in silver. I packed one carefully in my suitcase, not yet sure if I would reveal it to my family, but wanting to be prepared if the moment felt right. The company was now valued at $2.1 million based on our latest investment round, in which we had raised an additional $300,000 for product development and marketing. My equity stake translated to a net worth of over $800,000 on paper, more than 5 times what my college fund had contained. All of this had happened in less than a year, while Nathan's digital apex had burned through most of my college money with nothing substantial to show for it. As my train approached Boston, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger at my parents' betrayal, pride in what I had accomplished despite their lack of faith, sadness that our relationship had been damaged, perhaps irreparably, and a certain calm determination to finally bring everything into the open. The time for secrets was coming to an end. I was ready to confront my parents with both their betrayal and my success. I just needed to choose the perfect moment, one that would make the greatest impact and leave no room for them to diminish or dismiss what I had built. That moment would come sooner than I expected, catalyzed by Nathan's desperation and my parents' growing realization that they had backed the wrong venture. The first sign that something was wrong came when Dad picked me up from the train station in his old sedan, not the new SUV. "Had to downsize a bit," he explained vaguely when I commented. "Just being financially prudent." The house felt different too. The new furniture was still there, but a palpable tension hung in the air. Mom's smile seemed forced as she hugged me. Nathan was conspicuously absent. "Where's Nathan?" I asked. "Oh, he's meeting with some business associates," Mom said, her voice artificially bright. "He'll be home for dinner." Dinner was a subdued affair. Dad kept checking his phone. Mom made awkward small talk. When Nathan finally arrived, his eyes were red-rimmed and his shoulders slumped in defeat. "How did the meeting go?" Dad asked immediately. Nathan threw himself into a chair. "How do you think it went?" "Same as all the others. Interesting concept, but not differentiated enough from existing platforms. Come back when you have significant user traction." He mimicked a condescending voice. Mom reached over to pat his hand. "They just don't see your vision, honey." "No, Mom, they see it just fine," Nathan snapped. "They just don't think it's worth anything. And at this point, neither do I." Dad's face darkened. "We've invested too much to give up now." "Invested?" Nathan laughed bitterly. "You mean wasted. $140,000 down the drain. The developer took off with half of it and delivered garbage code. The marketing agency charged us a fortune for posts that got 0 engagement. And the so-called business advisor you hired, his great advice was to pivot to blockchain, whatever that means." I sat quietly, absorbing this confirmation of what I had suspected. Digital Apex had failed spectacularly, consuming nearly my entire college fund. "Maybe we should discuss this later," Mom suggested, glancing nervously at me. "Why?" Nathan demanded. "Mackenzie knows we lost her college fund in a bad investment, right? That's what you told her." The room went very still. Dad cleared his throat. "Nathan, that's enough." But Nathan, driven by his own disappointment and guilt, couldn't stop. "She doesn't know it was for Digital Apex. That you took her Yale money and gave it to me." He looked at me, a mix of defiance and shame in his eyes. "Well, now you know, Mac. They bet on the wrong kid." Mom burst into tears. Dad started yelling at Nathan. Nathan shouted back that he'd never wanted blood money to begin with. I remained calm, watching the chaos unfold. This wasn't how I'd planned the confrontation, but perhaps it was better this way. Raw and unscripted, with the truth finally exposed through their own words. When the shouting died down, I spoke for the first time. "I already knew." All three turned to stare at me. "What do you mean you knew?" Dad asked, baffled. "I overheard you talking last Christmas about Digital Apex. About taking my college fund to invest in Nathan's real future, while I could take out loans like everyone else." My voice was steady, controlled. "I found the bank statements showing the transfers from my college account to Digital Apex LLC. I heard you dismiss my education as just book smarts while praising Nathan's business acumen." Mom's face had gone pale. Mackenzie, we can explain. No need, I cut her off. I understand perfectly. You made a calculated decision to prioritize Nathan's venture over my education. You lied to my face about losing the money. You watched me scramble to piece together loans and work 3 jobs without an ounce of guilt. And now you're upset because your grand plan failed. Dad's expression hardened into defensiveness. We were trying to do what was best for both of you. Nathan's business had potential to what? Make millions. I interrupted. Based on what expertise? What market research? What unique value proposition? Or did you just assume that because Nathan is charismatic and male, he'd naturally succeed in business while I should be grateful for student loans? That's not fair, Mom protested weakly. Not fair. I laughed. You want to talk about what's not fair? I reached for my bag and pulled out the elegant glass bottle containing our serum sample, placing it on the dinner table. What's that? Nathan asked, confused. That, I said with quiet pride, is the first product from Precision Dermal Science. My company. There was a moment of stunned silence. Your company, Dad repeated. Yes, the startup I co-founded last spring after winning Yale's innovation competition. We've developed a proprietary enzyme technology that revolutionizes how active ingredients are delivered in skincare products. We've secured 3 licensing deals with major cosmetic companies. We've raised $450,000 in venture capital. And as of our last valuation, the company is worth $2.1 million. Their stunned expressions would have been comical under different circumstances. That's amazing, Mackenzie, Mom stammered. Why didn't you tell us? Why would I? Asked, my voice still steady. You made it clear that you didn't believe in my potential. You literally stole my future to invest in Nathan's. Why would I share my success with people who betrayed me so completely? Nathan was examining the bottle with newfound respect. This is legit. More real than Digital Apex ever was, I confirmed. We have paying customers, functioning products, and a sustainable business model. Dad's expression had shifted from shock to calculation. I could practically see the gears turning as he reassessed my value to the family. Well, this is wonderful news, he said, attempting to sound proud and supportive. I always knew you had entrepreneurial potential, Mackenzie. You get that from me. You know, we should discuss how to leverage the family's business connections to help you expand. The audacity was breathtaking. I couldn't help but laugh. Let me be perfectly clear, I said, looking him directly in the eyes. You will have nothing to do with Precision Dermal Science. You will not profit from it. You will not advise on it. You will not claim credit for it. What you will do, however, is repay every penny of my college fund. Dad's facade vanished. Now wait just a minute. That money was legally in your name. Yes, I finished for him. I'm well aware of the legal situation. I've consulted with attorneys about it extensively. And while I may not have a strong legal case for fraud, I have more than enough for a compelling story. Imagine how it would look. Successful parents steal their daughter's college fund for their son's failed startup, force her into student debt, lie about it, then try to claim credit when she succeeds anyway. Gasp. You wouldn't publicly humiliate us like that. Why not? You had no problem privately humiliating me. But I'm willing to be reasonable. Repay my college fund, the full $150,000, and I'll consider the matter closed between us. That's blackmail, Dad sputtered. No, that's consequences, I corrected him. And it's a generous offer considering what you did. Nathan, to my surprise, spoke up. She's right, Dad. We owe her the money. I've been telling you that all along. He turned to me. I'm sorry, Mac. I didn't know they lied to you about where the money went. I thought you agreed to it. I wasn't ready to absolve Nathan entirely, but I appreciated his acknowledgement. We don't have that kind of money available right now, Dad admitted grudgingly. Most of our liquid assets went into Digital Apex. I'm aware of that too, I replied. That's why I've prepared a repayment agreement. I pulled a document from my bag and slid it across the table. 5 years with reasonable interest. Monthly payments that won't bankrupt you, but will ensure I'm made whole. Dad glanced at the terms, his face darkening. And if we refuse? Then I share my story with everyone. Your colleagues, your friends, your golf buddies, Mom's book club, the extended family. I have recordings, bank statements, emails, all documenting exactly what you did and how you justified it. I'm sure Grandma would be particularly interested to hear how you gambled away her granddaughter's future. The mention of his mother-in-law, who had always emphasized education and fair treatment of children, made Dad flinch visibly. A tense silence filled the room. Finally, Dad reached for a pen. "We'll need to review this with our attorney," he said stiffly as he signed. "Of course," I agreed. "I'll give you the contact information for mine." After they signed, Mom attempted reconciliation. "Mackenzie, I hope someday you can forgive us. We truly thought we were making the best decision for the family." "No," I corrected her gently. "You made the best decision for Nathan at my expense. And you've been doing that our entire lives. The difference is that this time, I refuse to be the sacrifice." That night, as I lay in my childhood bedroom for what I suspected might be the last time, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. The confrontation hadn't gone as planned, but perhaps it had gone as needed. The truth was out. Accountability had been established. And I had stood up for myself in a way I never had before. The next morning, I received an email from Yale's financial aid office. Someone had anonymously donated a scholarship specifically for female students in biochemistry with entrepreneurial aspirations. It would cover my remaining tuition and fees for the next 2.5 years. I never confirmed it, but I strongly suspected Nathan was behind it. His attempt at making amends, using whatever personal savings he'd managed to accumulate. It didn't erase the betrayal, but it suggested that perhaps there was hope for him to grow beyond the entitled person our parents had raised him to be. As for Mom and Dad, they did comply with the repayment agreement. Our relationship remained distant and formal. Some betrayals are too fundamental to simply forgive and forget. But with time, we established a new kind of relationship, one based on clear boundaries and mutual respect rather than blind trust and unmet expectations. And precision dermal science. It continued to thrive beyond my wildest expectations, eventually attracting the attention of a major beauty conglomerate that acquired the company for $28 million 3 years after its founding. My share of the proceeds was enough to pay off my student loans, buy a comfortable home in Cambridge, and establish a foundation providing scholarships for students whose families had failed to support their educational dreams. The painful betrayal that had once threatened to derail my future had instead launched me on a path to greater success than I could have imagined. Sometimes, the worst things that happen to us become the catalysts for our greatest achievements. 3 years after that fateful Christmas confrontation, I stood on Yale's campus in my graduation cap and gown, diploma in hand. The journey to this moment had been anything but traditional, yet somehow all the more meaningful for its challenges. Precision dermal science had been acquired 6 months earlier, and the technology we developed was now being integrated into a full line of premium skincare products, with our names credited as the inventors. The company had kept us on as consultants, allowing me to complete my degree while still participating in the exciting evolution of our innovation. As I scanned the crowd of proud families, I spotted a familiar face. Nathan, now 22 and much changed from the entitled boy he'd once been, was making his way toward me. "Congratulations, Mac," he said, offering a tentative hug. I wouldn't have missed it. Our relationship had undergone a slow but significant transformation. After Digital Apex's failure and my confrontation with our parents, Nathan had been forced to reckon with his own role in the betrayal. He'd started community college, found a job at a local tech company, and gradually developed a more realistic understanding of what success actually required. "Thanks for coming," I replied, genuinely glad to see him. "Are Mom and Dad here too?" He shook his head. "They said to send their congratulations. Dad's got a golf tournament and Mom's." "Well, you know." I nodded, unsurprised. My parents had fulfilled their financial obligation, But emotional reconciliation remained elusive. They found it difficult to relate to me now that the power dynamic had shifted so dramatically. The daughter they had dismissed as merely book smart was now financially independent and professionally respected in ways they struggled to comprehend. "It's okay," I assured him. "I'm just glad you're here." Later, at a small celebration dinner with Jordan, Liam, Professor Wilson, and a few close friends, Nathan raised his glass in a toast. "To my sister," he said, "who taught me the hardest and most important lesson of my life, that real success comes from genuine effort, not entitlement or shortcuts." I felt a surge of emotion at his words. The journey had changed both of us. Me into someone more confident and resilient, him into someone more humble and thoughtful. After graduation, I used part of my windfall from the company acquisition to establish the Second Chance Scholarship Foundation, providing financial support to students whose family resources had been withdrawn or never existed. The foundation's mission statement included a phrase that had become something of a personal mantra. "Sometimes our greatest setbacks become the foundation for our most meaningful successes." My parents and I eventually developed a more functional, if somewhat distant, relationship. The annual family gatherings were no longer marred by tension and secrets, though there remained an unspoken acknowledgement that some trust, once broken, could never be fully restored. Dad occasionally attempted to take credit for my entrepreneurial spirit. "She gets that business sense from me," when introducing me to his friends. I learned to smile politely and change the subject rather than correct him publicly. His need for validation said more about him than it did about me. Mom made more genuine efforts at reconnection, sending thoughtful cards and occasionally calling just to check in. During one such call, she finally offered the straightforward apology I had long hoped for. "We were wrong, Mackenzie," she said simply. "We thought we knew what was best, but we were blinded by our own biases and expectations. I'm sorry we didn't believe in you the way we should have." "Thank you for saying that," I replied, feeling a weight lift that I hadn't realized I was still carrying. That meant a lot to me. Nathan, meanwhile, had discovered his own path. He'd completed an associate's degree in computer science and found that he had a genuine talent for user experience design. He was now working for a successful app development company and taking night classes to complete his bachelor's degree. We spoke regularly, and I had even invested in a small side project he was developing, not out of obligation, but because I genuinely saw its potential. Professor Wilson had become a true mentor and friend. She often invited me back to Yale to speak to her students about the intersection of science and entrepreneurship. During one such visit, she shared an observation that perfectly captured my journey. "You know what makes your story so powerful?" she asked as we walked across the campus I once thought would be my undoing. "It's not just that you overcame adversity. It's that you refused to let that adversity define you or limit what you believed was possible." Her words resonated deeply. The betrayal had initially felt like the end of my dreams. Instead, it had become the catalyst for dreams I hadn't even known to imagine. The financial security from the company acquisition gave me freedom, but it was the confidence gained through building something successful from nothing that truly transformed me. I no longer feared losing resources or support, because I knew I could create them for myself. As I look back now, I realize that my parents' betrayal, painful as it was, contained an unexpected gift. Had they supported me as promised, I might have followed a more conventional path. Yale degree, prestigious job, gradual career advancement. Their actions forced me to discover my own capacity for innovation and resilience much earlier than I might have otherwise. That's not to excuse what they did. The breach of trust was real and deeply harmful. But I've learned that moving forward doesn't require pretending the past didn't happen. It requires extracting the lessons and leaving behind the bitterness. If you're facing a similar betrayal, whether from family, friends, or colleagues, remember this. Their actions revealed their limitations, not yours. The people who should have believed in you may fail you, but that doesn't determine what you're capable of achieving. Sometimes the very people who should support you become the obstacles you must overcome to reach your full potential. The ultimate victory isn't just proving them wrong, though I admit that part is satisfying. The ultimate victory is creating a life so aligned with your authentic talents and values that their approval becomes irrelevant. Have you ever had someone underestimate you or betray your trust, only to find that it pushed you toward greater success? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best beginnings.